The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
This might have been the funniest part of the entire Trinidad Chambliss situation.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels.
One of the most entertaining portions of yesterday's announcement of the Trinidad Chambliss injunction was the reaction out of opposing fan bases. The ones that thought that, hey, we have a chance of a W against Ole Miss with Deuce Knight there because Trinidad Chambliss, no way he is going to play quarterback. Heck, that's the reason why Lane Kiffin didn't recruit Trinidad Chambliss, because there was no chance that he was going to be able to play this year. And they got on Twitter and immediately, all of a sudden, you would have thought it was like the 1960s out there and there was no NIL, to where you were getting some baseline stuff was like, this is the death of student athletes. And oh my goodness, it was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. You have Georgia fans randomly talking noise at Ole Miss over this. Now, remember that Georgia hasn't beaten Ole Miss outside of Kirby Smart, outside of Athens, Georgia, under Kirby Smart ever. And the last time that they won outside of Sanford Stadium, Matthew Stafford, I believe, was the quarterback, and it was like 2009 or something like that. But I digress. It's hilarious that all of a sudden they get on their sanctimonious self that we're ruining the game that we love, and we're all rooting for everything to be pure and good and all of that. And Ole Miss doing this, never mind the fact that the NCAA just approved a ninth-year senior yesterday. Never mind that. We're concerned about the purity of the game. We're concerned about what's going to happen to these poor high school kids. It's really, really sad to think of. And LSU fans are like saying, well, Lane Kiffin knew this was going on, but he didn't want the headache and all of this. And honestly, the people that's not talking, Alabama's not talking, and Texas isn't talking. They're not the ones bumping their gums at the moment. And that is because they know they have a chance to win, and they're not going to give Ole Miss any help. I don't think that Georgia has a shot to beat Ole Miss in Oxford. I mean, they're good enough to do it. I just, historically, I just don't see it. You saw what happened in the Sugar Bowl and how Ole Miss completely took over that game. Now you're going to have a second-year version of that going. No, I don't buy it. LSU, you're dealing with Big Game Lane. And Ole Miss fans all know about Big Game Lane. Now their fans, they're petrified because they thought they had a good chance to win with their $50 million roster, and they cannot afford to take an L in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. The last coach that beat Ole Miss in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium, well, that was Ed Orgeron in the 2019 team. Even that, John Rice Plumlee ran for 200 yards and Ole Miss put up 35 points with a bunch of freshmen on the field. The point is, opposing fan bases reacting like this should be the manna from heaven to Ole Miss fans, because this is a tangent acknowledgement by them of where Ole Miss has gotten. And we're going to talk in the third segment how Ole Miss being a top 5 team now, yeah, that's just a given. Going into the preseason, they should be a top 5 team and right up there at the tippy top to be the SEC champion. We're going to talk in the second segment of how the NCAA just completely wimped out in this injunction hearing, and we'll talk about that as well. But right now, we're talking about the entertainment that we got from other fan bases, because, listen, this injunction, although Ole Miss fans have been telling anyone that would listen that this was a home run deal, you still had people from other fan bases trying to equate the Charles Bediako case with the Trinidad Chambliss case. They kept trying to put Trinidad Chambliss right alongside Diego Pavia. Do you know why? Do you realize why they did that? The opposing fan base are starting to rise up a public sentiment because of their fear of the Ole Miss offense. And the NCAA is trying to latch on because they won a case involving Charles Bediako, a case there was a letter penned essentially by Greg Sankey in that case. But we've been saying from the very beginning that this Trinidad Chambliss case was just a simple 6th-year medical redshirt case. That's all it ever was. It wasn't a Bediako thing. It wasn't trying to get 10 years of eligibility. It was trying to do the same thing that the NCAA has done for 50 years. And the problem with everything was the fact that Division II has different rules than Division I, and the standard for what you had to produce was different. And that gave the NCAA an opportunity to deny it, which is in their bylaws as a mandate to do. The NCAA acted in completely bad faith. Opposing fan bases didn't want to hear any of that. They just wanted this to be a Bediako type situation to where the NCAA wins in court. And there's still going to be people talking about shade tree judges and all of that happening in court. But I promise Trinidad Chambliss won this case on the merits of this case. Do you know how I know that? Because the NCAA lawyer didn't even stick around for the judgment. That is how much they got whipped. They left. They went off to Joey Aguiar's case, which is happening this morning in Knoxville, Tennessee. Same 3 lawyers. So the entertainment of seeing the other fan bases, the fear that is masquerading as trolling and whatever they can do to try and make themselves feel better, should be a tangent acknowledgement to the Ole Miss fans that you've basically arrived to where you obviously have to be afraid. Georgia fans are afraid of you. Florida fans are afraid of you. LSU fans are afraid of you. Alabama fans are afraid of you. Florida fans are afraid of you. And the reaction that this injunction got online is proof of that. And it was by far the most entertaining portion of the night. Well, that and the Pete Golding shark, to where Trinidad came in and he posted a shark. That one right there was pretty fantastic. But now we're going to talk about it in the third segment. Ole Miss has the best quarterback in the country, the best running back in the country, and the best kicker in the country. 3 positions that affect winning. And you want to try and find a way that Ole Miss isn't going to be good? Good luck. We'll see how that works out for you.
The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races decided by inches or fractions of a second. Both popular and niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
A LeBron James triple-double leads the Lakers to a win Thursday night.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
So throughout the time, Andy, that we've covered the Lakers and the NBA, it has become abundantly clear that the last day before the All-Star break is essentially like the last, like you used to treat, you out there and you, Andy, used to treat the last day of school. It's like you're there, but you're not always there. So we will break down what turned into a good result for the Lakers Thursday night. They beat Dallas 124-104 behind a triple-double from LeBron James. We'll give you some health updates on Luka Doncic and DeAndre Ayton, neither of whom played in this game. And, of course, the Lakers go into the break 33-21, which is good. And it's also worrisome, depending on your point of view. So, but let's start with the game, Andy. LeBron James turns back the clock. This was, as complete of a game as he's played this season. He finishes with 28 points, 10 rebounds, 12 assists, and he knew that 10th rebound, what it represented. I mean, nobody getting in the way of that one. Stole one from him. Yeah,
I was going to say, ain't nobody getting in the way of it after Austin Reeves did get in the way of LeBron's previous chance at a 10th rebound. There happened to be a timeout called after that, and Austin apologized to LeBron. He did not realize in the moment, these guys are all aware, whether you're talking about the player on the verge of a triple-double, a lot of teammates, stuff like that. Austin just forgot in that moment. But when LeBron, it was like a possession or two later, got that 10th rebound, the entire bench stood up and applauded. It was LeBron's. I actually did not realize this, even though it makes sense. I just hadn't really thought about it. It was his first triple-double of this season. Yeah, he's come close before, but he had not had one. Bonkers stat, and we can drill down on some of this, peel back some of the layers of the onion. This is career number 123 for triple-doubles for LeBron. Tonight marked LeBron's 1,598th game for his career. I did the math. That means LeBron has averaged a triple-double every 13th time he has stepped on the court.
Pretty good.
That is effing bonkers, people.
It's right up there with those numbers like you see where they break it down and you realize LeBron has played with or against 33% of the players who have played in the NBA in its entire history.
You know what's funny too? During the Spectrum Sportsnet broadcast, they noted that it was the 123rd of LeBron's career and that he's had 50 against the Lakers. And I thought about it and I was like, you know what? You and I
50 triple doubles?
Assuming
there's no way LeBron has had 50 triple doubles against the Lakers.
Then I guess
maybe with, but not against.
Okay, yes, that's what it was. 50. I guess it was 50 with. It was. You're right. It's
not JJ Barea, Andy.
No.
He works the Lakers that.
You're correct. He had spent too much time in the Eastern Conference, but just 50 with.
Yeah, only he played the Lakers 50 times.
Yeah, no. You're right. But 50 just with one team in and of itself is absolutely crazy. That type of production sustained for that long goes without saying. Also, the oldest player in NBA history to ever record a triple-double. It's really, really remarkable stuff.
It is. And I know there are a lot of people who aren't huge LeBron fans and are ready for the experience to be over. And Andy, and I get it. We have these conversations with each other, with you guys all the time. But there are times when you just have, whether you like the guy or hate the guy, you have to pause and recognize what games like this are. I do also want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. I bet you wish you'd use Gametime to get into the game at the Crypt on Thursday. JJ talked about it after the game. The oldest guy to do blank is something that LeBron does basically every time he plays at this point. And it's all very impressive, but and LeBron got a little nostalgic about this stuff too, and kind of broke it all down and talked about the process of what goes into this and what he still enjoys after the game. But JJ said, and he said it a few times, I am most impressed by the fact that in year 23, with $1 billion in the bank, basically, I'm not exaggerating.
If you believe the reports, it's not an exaggeration at all.
Right. And if let's say they're 30% short, he's still comfortable.
His career earnings, I'm looking them up right now. I believe the career earnings are $500 million by themselves. And that's before you even get into endorsements, per diem that he's pocketed, all that sort of stuff.
That actually, I was trying to figure out the other day exactly the volume of chalk that he has thrown in the air over the course of his career, figuring it like 2 teaspoons or a teaspoon and a half or a tablespoon every game. Like just the quantity of chalk that is over the course of 23 seasons. Like they're just, all of these numbers are just absolutely freaking insane. But JJ talked about like the fact
that's close to really quick. It's close to 600 billion per Basketball Reference in salary alone. And that's before you get to all the other stuff.
And think how much it would be if he had a podcast.
Well, he did for a little while.
That's true. You got to sustain it. The big money, Andy, as everyone knows, comes in when you sustain it. When you shows a day.
Exactly. Exactly. That's how you end up part of the number one sports network anyway.
That's right. You're adding shorts. You're doing a lot of shorts, short form content.
When me, you, and LeBron get together, that's a lot of billions getting thrown around.
It is. Just the fact that you care, like you still care enough to kind of do the work that it requires to be good and engaged and all the. It's insane. And look, no Luka in this game, no DeAndre Ayton in this game. The Lakers got actually a lot of good performances across the roster. I think a bunch of people played well in this game, but they needed somebody to kind of step up and do it. And like we talked about this in Thursday's show, like LeBron, I think can't be counted on. It's unfair to count on LeBron to do this kind of stuff every night like he used to in his prime of primes. His floor on a nightly basis is clearly lower than it used to be from 48 minutes. Yeah. It's not necessarily lower for like 12 minutes of a quarter. He can we've seen him crank that up. But when it appears, it's still there. And there are nights. Tonight was a good one where they absolutely needed it.
And it also helped too, really quick. It also helped, and I'm sure we'll talk about this after the break. LeBron got some nice support on a night where he was definitely leading the charge, but it didn't feel like he was carrying the team. And there's a big difference because that ultimately allows LeBron to be this version of himself.
Mike Vrabel has made his decision. Terrell Williams will not be the Pats' defensive coordinator in 2026.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast.
Terrell Williams has reportedly been moved away from the defensive coordinator position. Earlier this week, Mike Vrabel met with the media, and he told the media he was going to take a few days to work through things regarding the defensive coordinator position. Of course, Terrell Williams was hired to be the DC. Terrell Williams, unfortunately, had a lot of medical issues, including cancer, which thankfully he is cancer-free now, but that forced him to step away. Zach Core, inside linebackers coach, took over the defensive play calling duty while Williams was gone. So Mike Vrabel, again, told the media this week, I'm going to take a few days. We're going to work through this. Well, it did not take too long. Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network posted, the Patriots are moving defensive coordinator Terrell Williams to a high-ranking role on the staff, with Williams now cancer-free. The Patriots have opened up the DC position with inside linebackers coach Zach Core, who called plays during the Super Bowl run, a top candidate. Now, as far as the Williams role, I could imagine it's going to be some kind of senior consultant, maybe assistant head coach while he consults with the staff on the defensive side. But Williams will certainly be taken care of by Mike Vrabel. So how did this happen? Why did this happen? First thing is, I do wonder if health is a factor. I know that, again, thankfully, Williams is cancer-free, but we're talking about long days and nights when you are a coordinator. You're putting in 60, 70, 80 hours at least every single week during the season. And even though you're cancer-free, it doesn't necessarily mean that your body is willing and ready to go right out of the gates. And so maybe, just maybe, this is a situation where Williams says, you know what? I'd much rather be in a different role. I don't have to put in 70 to 80 hours a week. I've got to take care of my body. I've got to take care of myself. I was lucky and fortunate that this thing played out the way it played out, and they were able to get to the cancer in time, and now I am cancer-free. So maybe this is Terrell Williams making the call. I could easily see Vrabel go to Williams, have this conversation, and Williams say, I want to still be with the team. I want to be an important part of this coaching staff, but I just am not sure or don't want to be the defensive coordinator because of the amount of work it's going to take. Maybe Williams just kind of recalibrated his priorities. I mean, this happens, right? You are almost on the verge of death with this cancer diagnosis, and you're wondering if you're going to live. You know, Williams told Andrew Callahan of the Boston Herald that he had very tough conversations with his family. He was looking at the idea of dying, and doctors told him that it was certainly possible that he could go. So maybe this just kind of has recalibrated Terrell Williams' priorities, and he wants to spend a little bit more time with his family. We know Vrabel is very mindful of his coaching staff, the hours they work. He's very mindful of making sure that they stay close with their family, stay in communication with their family, spend time with their family. So this could be a Williams call. You also have to look at it and say, well, if there is any kind of setback, God forbid, of course, we hope he's cancer-free for the rest of his life and things are all set, clean bill of health, and he lives another 35, 40 years. But if there's, any kind of setback or he starts to feel sick, don't forget, he had 2 ailments. I'm not sure that we even found out what the first ailment was, which kept him from camp. A lot of stuff was going on with Williams. And so maybe they say, hey, look, God forbid if you get sick again, it doesn't have to be cancer, but God forbid something else pops up. We're going to have chaos with the staff again. We're going to have to, move guys around. It's probably better that we just put somebody in that spot that is going to be able and capable of being in that spot for the entire year without any issues. Now, of course, you can't guarantee anything, but the history is the history. So all of that could play a role. Possible names that could be the next defensive coordinator for the Patriots. Let's not forget Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz was just with the Cleveland Browns. He was their DC last season, wanted to be their head coach. They decided to hire Todd Monken. And Schwartz, after a few days of going back and forth with the Browns organization, decided to resign. Schwartz spent time with Vrabel in Tennessee. So Jim Schwartz could absolutely be part of this thing. Shane Bowen, who was the Titans defensive coordinator when Vrabel was down there. Of course, Shane Bowen was with the New York Giants and Brian Daboll, and he is no longer in New York. So Shane Bowen could also be a part of this mix. But ultimately, I think all of us look at this and say, this is Zach Corr's job. This is going to be Zach Corr's job. I find it incredibly difficult to believe that Mike Vrabel would move Terrell Williams. Again, maybe it was Williams' choice, but I find it very difficult to believe that Williams would be moved to this different position on the coaching staff and that Vrabel would bypass Zach Corr after what he just did for him in 2025 and go outside of the organization to hire somebody else and put Zach Corr back as the inside linebackers coach. I would find that very difficult to believe. I have to imagine this conversation is Terrell Williams is moving up to assistant head coach, senior consultant, whatever the title is going to be. Zach Corr is going to be promoted officially from the inside linebackers coach to defensive coordinator. And frankly, Corr earned the gig. He deserves it. He deserves it. And I'm sure he feels weird about how it came together. And I'm sure he's not super comfortable with the idea of replacing Terrell Williams as the DC officially because of how it came about. But I'm also sure that Williams has given him his go-ahead. I'm sure that Vrabel has had the conversation with Corr and that Corr is ready to take over that spot. He earned the gig. It was a terrific run in the postseason. And when you think about the fact that this was Zach Corr's first time calling defensive plays, live bullets, man, he was thrown into it after week 1. And he got better and better and better as the season progressed. He earned the gig. And it also keeps cohesiveness from this year and what you established with the players. The players are comfortable with Core. Not to say they're not comfortable with Williams. They say they are, but this was the guy that was with them every single day. He was in meetings. He was working with them all year, helped them play as well as they did in the postseason. So there's already that bond, and the communications have been established. Zach Core knows how to have those conversations with certain players on the team. The players know exactly what to expect from Zach Core. You bring somebody from the outside, you now might be messing a little bit too much with the formula. And when you look at it, Terrell Williams, Zach Core, Mike Vrabel, that's a pretty impressive trio of defensive minds handling that side of the football for 2026. I am very comfortable with that setup. Williams as assistant head coach, defensive consultant, Zach Core as your DC, Vrabel as your head coach. Maybe Shane Bowen comes in and replaces Zach Core as the inside linebackers coach. That could be a possibility. And if Zach Core ever moves on to being a head coach, if he continues to show that potential and he's in the head coach conversation after 2026 or 2027, maybe at that point, Terrell Williams will be ready to return and more comfortable, and then you could just slide him back, or maybe you do something else. But I think it's rather obvious. I would put a lot of money down on Zach Core being the DC. And I am very comfortable with Williams, Core, and Vrabel moving forward.
The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races decided by inches or fractions of a second. Both popular and niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
The Green Bay Packers wouldn't have made the playoffs without Malik Willis in 2024, but Willis is going to get the bag in free agency, so Green Bay has to find their next project.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast.
This is the Malik Willis episode because I have been on 2 Locked On shows already talking about where Malik Willis could sign. Cleveland wants him. Minnesota wants him. It seems like the Dolphins also want him, which means the Packers are in all likelihood not going to have him. And Malik Willis has been an integral part of this team ever since he arrived. Maybe they beat Tennessee and Indy in 2024 with a different backup quarterback. They were not going to do it with Clayton Tune. Now, maybe they wouldn't have had Clayton Tune, but is Sean Clifford going to win those games? Probably not. So having one of, if not the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL was hugely valuable to the Green Bay Packers. And I have been someone who has regularly said, I just don't care. I just don't care about backup quarterbacks. Because if you're a team built around your quarterback, playing your backup quarterback means that you're, rightly probably screwed, right? Except what Malik Willis has shown me and what Malik Willis has radicalized in me is the idea that a running quarterback as your backup is the only way to do this. Because let's say you're Jordan Love and you run this offense at a top 5 level in terms of efficiency, regardless of what you think of Jordan Love in a vacuum, his quality, right? You're going to bring a backup quarterback in and he's going to be like at best, like the 38th best quarterback in the NFL and at best, the 25th or 28th best quarterback to run that specific system in the NFL. That's not a good formula to try and win a football game unless your defense and your run game is good enough to single-handedly win you the game. And maybe the Packers will be that in 2026. But let me tell you, they weren't that in 2024 and they weren't that in 2025. And their run game did in 2024 win them 2 games, but that was due in large part to Malik Willis. You cannot extract what we saw from Malik Willis and the run game. His impact on the run game was enormous, not just in the ways he contributed to it directly, but indirectly. Watch the Baltimore Ravens. I'm not saying Malik Willis is Lamar Jackson, but one of the reasons that that run game is so good, despite the fact that they do have some offensive line inconsistencies and some clear weaknesses, much like the Packers, Lamar Jackson is such a threat that it creates serious problem for defenses. And look what happened when Lamar Jackson was not Lamar Jackson last year. All of a sudden, their run game, not nearly as good. All of a sudden, Derrick Henry, not nearly as good, despite the fact that Derrick Henry is probably the greatest running back of his generation. And you know, in 2024 was absolute apex prime Derrick Henry. One of the reasons was Lamar Jackson. He makes your run game easier, and in the passing game, he can be your own check down. That's what Malik Willis brought this team. And then it took some time, but eventually he was able to run this whole offense. When he had to run the Ravens offense, or the game against the Ravens, coincidentally, they didn't have to run some special Malik Willis spinner, single wing, nonsense. They just ran the Packers offense. And he was able to, by time, create with his legs, designed runs, but also not designed runs. You think back to the Jacksonville game. He comes in, Jordan Love gets knocked out, Malik Willis comes in, and he makes several key plays in that game, including the game clincher to Jaden Reed on a beautiful throw down the left sideline. Against the Bears, the Packers are losing that game in 2024 at the end. Malik Willis leads them on the go-ahead potential game-winning drive at the end. We've seen this guy deliver potential victories. It was the defense that blew that in 2024. So I think Malik Willis is going to get a serious amount of money. This is the model now. Find a quarterback that can run and has passing upside, particularly as a deep ball thrower. That's what I would want. So are there quarterbacks out there who fit the bill for the Green Bay Packers? Well, if you want a project, someone who you think, okay, maybe they could become something, they have that upside, that running ability, well, Malik Willis would be your number one option. But after that, I would be looking at someone like Trey Lance. Trey Lance was drafted by the San Francisco 49ers. They trade up, give up multiple future first-round picks. And Trey Lance was going to be the heir apparent to Jimmy Garoppolo. He was the quarterback they picked to say, we don't think our quarterback is talented enough. We need someone who can do more inside this offense. And that was Trey Lance. Trey Lance was someone that I absolutely loved in that draft class. And we don't know how Brian Gutekunst feels about Trey Lance, but GMs, front office folks, scouts, they hold on to those priors. And it would be easy to say he didn't get a fair shake in San Francisco. Then he got hurt multiple times. He goes to Dallas. That was kind of a nightmare. Goes to LA. That was kind of a nightmare. But those were not exactly ideal situations for his development. Maybe in Green Bay, where they know exactly how to use a kind of player like Trey Lance. Not quite as explosive as Malik Willis, doesn't quite have the arm strength of Malik Willis, but similar in terms of the traits and the play style, I would say. And again, started his career in San Francisco, so you're talking about a lot of the same concepts, a lot of the same basic principles as what this Packers offense is going to be. Can you tighten up some of the mechanics? And in a one-off situation, can he do some of the things with his legs? Can he create some explosive plays down the field? This is a Packers offense that is built to create explosive plays. We talked about this at the top yesterday. Christian Watson, Matthew Golden, Tucker Kraft, Jaden Reed, their ability to win down the field is what separates them from other players and what separates this offense from other offenses around the league. He is the kind of buy low that I think the Packers could be interested in. And it would cost like the veteran minimum, basically. Like, I think you could get him for like $2 or $3 million for nothing. And he's still young. He's 25, turning 26 this year. Malik Willis is 26, turning 27 this year. So basically, you're getting him a year later than you got Malik Willis before him. And by the way, Trey Lance had some appealing plays as an NFL player. He made some throws when you went, oh, wow. And Malik Willis in Tennessee looked like a non-NFL player too. And he was someone that Mike Vrabel just said, we're done. We're good here. We'd rather start Josh Dobbs off the street than Malik Willis. And then here comes Malik Willis looking like a not quite a franchise quarterback, but certainly a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL with Green Bay. I made this point. If you look at the top players in EPA per play over the last 2 seasons, minimum 140 plays. Malik Willis is number 1. Josh Allen is number 2. Jordan Love is number 3. Those are the most efficient quarterbacks with at least 140 plays over the last 2 seasons. This offense is designed to generate efficiency. Now, look, so is San Francisco's, but Trey Lance got hurt. And that was one of the big reasons they had to go back to Jimmy G and then had to go to Brock Purdy and all of those things. Trey Lance is someone I would definitely have some interest in. If you wanted to go the more veteran route, Marcus Mariota would be on that list. Now he's going to turn 33 in this upcoming year. And Marcus Mariota played for Matt LaFleur. Like, if Mariota wants to go try and win a title, this is your opportunity. Now, maybe he just goes back to Washington. He's sort of the perfect backup for Jaden Daniels, but he is going to be a free agent. I would not be surprised if he was like, hey, you know, what I'd like to do is go somewhere that I can win a title. Maybe he thinks he can do that in Washington. Maybe he thinks that's a better situation for him. But remember, he has played under Matt LaFleur before, and the most efficient season of Marcus Mariota's career was under Matt LaFleur. Now, it's not like at this point Jordan Love needs the tutelage of Marcus Mariota, but it's nice to have a veteran that you feel comfortable is not going to lose you the game. Deep breath. Okay, here we go. The name that intrigues me the most, if the team that is currently paying him to play football decides to cut him loose, is Justin Fields. The Jets gave Justin Fields a bunch of money. I think the Justin Fields contract, coincidentally, is going to be the template for any Malik Willis deal. I think Malik Willis is going to get $20+ million a year over 2 or 3 years, precisely because that's what Justin Fields got. And I know Fields had played more football, but that also means he had more bad stuff on tape than Malik Willis did. Just in total sum, just because most of what he did was bad. But we saw him 2 years ago in Pittsburgh play solid football. He wasn't the reason that they went to Russell Wilson. They went to Russell Wilson because they paid Russell Wilson and they felt like he was the veteran that was always supposed to be starting, then got hurt, and then was not able to start the season. They won games with Justin Fields. And I know that Pittsburgh defense was creating a lot of turnovers and it was a lot of nonsense. It was a lot of games where he had 120 yards passing. But how is that different from Malik Willis? Justin Fields is a superlative runner. I think he is, outside of Lamar Jackson, probably the second best running quarterback in the NFL. Just ask the Packers. They've seen it up close and personal. And though he struggles with reads at times, his best throws are almost always deep ball throws. His touch on deep balls is there. He can create down the field. He can create out of structure. If there's pressure, escape to your right and take off or try and make something happen. He is the project I would be wanting to invest in if I were running the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers are going to have to make some sort of decision here. We also, over at The Leap, have been chronicling over the last couple of years. Jason Hirschhorn, America's Guest, and my co-founder over at The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to, has done an outstanding job identifying the kinds of players the Green Bay Packers tend to draft in these situations. That piece will be coming out in the next couple months as we head toward draft season. So if there's someone in the draft who could fit the bill, I think that would be taking a risk. They did already bring in Kyle McCord, so maybe that is their draft pick in this case. I think adding someone like Fields, someone like Lance, and I think Mariota certainly fits the bill as well.
The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races decided by inches or fractions of a second. Both popular and niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
Why a Will Wade LSU reunion just became more real of a possibility than it has ever been before.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers.
As the LSU basketball season has continued its plunge into the depths of despair, there's this seeming foregone conclusion that Matt McMahon is going to be fired. And we've talked about that here on the show. If you're an everydayer, thank you for being here, and you've heard me say it. But ultimately, what it boils down to is that's not a foregone conclusion, at least not today, because donor fatigue is a very real thing. Again, I've asked 3 questions. Should they fire him? Could they fire him? Will they fire him? Should they? Probably so after this year with all the investment in the roster and to have the season you're having. Could they? Like financially, are there people around LSU who support LSU that could write checks? Yes. Will they? That becomes a cloudier question just because of all the donor fatigue after what they just did for football. And based on firsthand conversations I have had with some high-level donors, that donor fatigue is real. And there's not a lot of eagerness to jump in and write the kind of checks it's going to take to buy out Matt McMahon, his staff, hire a new coach, potentially pay the roster. Now, I think that would change if the target were Will Wade. And I have pushed back against that idea many times for a lot of reasons. Some are financial, some are the fact that Will Wade's at a basketball school that actually cares about basketball, and LSU doesn't. But he does, Will Wade and his family did love it here in Baton Rouge, and he did love LSU, and does believe that he could win a national championship at LSU. It would take a lot of doing. I still don't think that it is likely. But for the first time, I'll tell you it's possible, even if slightly, because of something that happened on Thursday. Now, normally, the Board of Supervisors appointing a new chairman or the governor appointing a new chairman to the Board of Supervisors would be back page news. It's just not that big of a deal. The Board of Supervisors largely is a ceremonial body. They don't actually have much autonomy. They rubber stamp what's pushed toward them. And the people that serve on the Board of Supervisors are governmental or gubernatorial appointees. The governor appoints the members of the Board of Supervisors. So typically, these are wealthy people who are donors or benefactors of the governor. And when board members term off, the new governor gets to appoint board members. And normally, those are people who were benefactors of his or her campaign. So just like Jeff Landry gets to appoint members of the Board of Supervisors, so too did John Bell Edwards before him and Bobby Jindal before him, and so on. Well, on Thursday, Governor Jeff Landry posted on social media, and it has been made official, that Scott Ballard is no longer the chairman of LSU's Board of Supervisors. The new chairman is Lee Mallett. Now, this is the most significant part of this story that can't be lost. And I'm going to give you some detail with things that we've talked about loosely, mostly back when Scott Woodward was fired. And I'm going to tell you this story And it'll start to connect the dots a bit, so bear with me, okay? So if you don't know who Lee Mallet is, that's fine. Lee Mallet is a very successful businessman, very wealthy businessman from Southwest Louisiana, and he's a supporter of the governor. He also supported Bobby Jindal and was appointee to certain commissions and committees from under the Jindal administration, and he's now a member of the LSU Board of Supervisors, and he is a donor and benefactor of Jeff Landry's campaign. Lee Mallet, a year ago, you might remember there was a story that started to make the rounds about Will Wade possibly being rehired at LSU while he was at McNeese. And there was sources, there were stories that were anonymously sourced about people willing to push this through and pay for Matt McMahon's buyout and pay for Will Wade's contract and all that. Well, that was Lee Mallet. Lee Mallet, being in Southwest Louisiana, where Will Wade, of course, was at McNeese, was willing to, in a large way, support the buyout for Matt McMahon and the salary to get Will Wade from McNeese back to LSU. Scott Woodward was not willing to do that, despite the fact that Lee Mallet asked the governor to intervene. Governor spoke to Scott Woodward about it. Woodward wouldn't budge. So, by the way, that's one of the strikes against Scott Woodward. If you go back and listen to any of our episodes when Scott Woodward was fired or they mutually agreed to part ways, whatever, I told you some of this. It wasn't a key cog in the wheel, but it was part of the wheel. It was a cog in the wheel. Now it becomes way more relevant. So because Lee Mallet is now the chairman of the LSU Board of Supervisors, appointed by the governor, a governor who wants Lee Mallet to certainly get what he wants because he's a benefactor. And now he's in a position of even more authority as the chairman of the Board of Supervisors. So you can see where all this is going, how all these dots connect. The man who was driving the bus to get Will Wade back to LSU a year ago is now the chairman of the LSU Board of Supervisors, appointed by the governor. So that alone is a gigantic, whoa, light bulbs flashing, like, pay attention to this. Again, and I'm going to go through here in a second, a lot of the roadblocks and a lot of why this probably won't happen. But when you see this move on Thursday, it is something that you, at bare minimum, have to consider as a possibility. There's a lot that still would have to happen to make this work. But for the first time ever in this conversation, I'm at least willing to consider the possibility of this. Now, I want to say this before I go any further, that a year ago when Scott Woodward did not bring Will Wade back, that was the right decision. So too was it the right decision to fire Will Wade when they did. And I say that as someone who adores Will Wade. Will was great to me when he was the coach at LSU. He came on my show. We had a very friendly and courteous professional working relationship. I thought he was awesome. He made LSU fans care about LSU basketball. I think Will Wade's awesome. I wish that he was 24 months later than he was. I mean, everything he did is legal now, and he can win. He's showing it right now at NC State. But the NCAA at the time was holding off on a ruling on LSU football because they wanted their pound of flesh from Will Wade. And until they got their pound of flesh from Will Wade, they would not issue a ruling on LSU football. And there was just no reality where LSU should ever sacrifice football to retain a basketball coach. You were willing to sacrifice Will Wade to preserve the football program, and it was 100% the right decision. And ask the athletic director who fired that coach amid scandal to rehire that coach is not a realistic thing that should ever happen. But as we've seen, this governor has a way of being massively influential and getting done what he wants done, whether it makes sense or not, whether people agree with it or not. I mean, he put Omar the Tiger on the field. A lot of people didn't like that. He pushed Scott Woodward out. I didn't like that. But he's also had a way of doing things that are very beneficial. His choice for the LSU assistant president was Wade Roos, and that seems to be going awesome. So there's strikes and gutters, there's good and bad, but he's an influential guy who, when he makes his mind up on something, is going to work to get it done. And it feels like Jeff Landry and Lee Mallett have their mind made up that they're trying to get Will Wade back in Baton Rouge. And I don't know that it's going to happen. I don't know that it's likely, but we got to consider the possibilities.
The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most. FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races decided by inches or fractions of a second. Both popular and niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
It's been over a month since John Harbaugh was the Baltimore Ravens head coach, but that doesn't mean he doesn't still feel some type of way about his criticism.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
Sam, I'm telling you, I'm gonna keep saying this until we get to free agency, but it is slowly creeping up on us here. Less than a month to go. You got the period where you can talk to guys starting on the 9th, and then the 11th is when the new league year officially starts. There's a lot to look forward to, and already some things are in the works, which is really exciting.
Oh yeah, this is the time if you're looking for a way to improve yourself as a football team. This period of time is where things get cranked up. You got a Super Bowl champion. Now it's time to fight for that spot that the Seattle Seahawks took in 2025-26 season right now. So Ravens are definitely going to be one of those teams you're looking out for to possibly make a move to make this team great again.
Yep. I'm ready. I'm ready for it. And, you know, I think a lot of the excitement for me, because again, we still have free agency to go. We have the draft to go, potential trades, but the coaching staff gives me a lot of optimism here. And we'll get to the official finalized staff in the second part of the show. But I just think the change, right? It was time for something new. The Ravens, John Harbaugh's gone from Baltimore. Now it is Jesse Minter's show. But John Harbaugh still, he's talking about the Ravens. He wanted a little bit of a Baltimore press tour on Wednesday and throughout the week here. And he went on with Glenn Clark Radio. And Glenn does a great job. And I personally love how Glenn handled himself during this. Sam, John Harbaugh gave a little parting shot. It was pretty wild, in my opinion, to the Baltimore Ravens criticism that he faced. So he was asked by Glenn about a lot of different things. And one of those things was about, you know, Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter and those guys. And so he was describing some of the good qualities that those guys have. But then it took a really weird turn really quickly for Harbaugh. And so I'll start there. I'll just read out the entire interaction. Harbaugh said, quote, "I remember people wanted to run Mike out. People didn't want me to hire Mike. People in Baltimore, you might have been on that train," referring to Glenn. And Glenn said the Dolphins game was a little questionable, which I mean, it was. That game was pretty hard, but it was also Mike's second ever NFL game calling defensive plays. So then Harbaugh said, quote, "So you're saying you were wrong, and I appreciate you saying you were wrong at that time because you were proven wrong, and that's okay because that's a moment in time, and I was right, and I was proven right, and I was proven right about Jesse too, and I'll stand by that because I know what a good coach looks like when I see it, and I'll be proven right about Zach Orr too. You'll see." And then went on a little bit of he was proud of that and his guys and whatnot. And then Glenn followed that up and said, "Can I ask you about Zach because you brought him up? Somebody would say, if that's the case, why isn't he your DC in New York?" Which is a phenomenal question and follow-up to that. And Harbaugh said, quote, "Because sometimes it's time to change. Zach and I have had those conversations, and we both felt it'd be best for him to go get the next opportunity to grow in a different way. So he gets a chance to grow in a different way. And I think it's going to be great for him to get a chance to do that. And it's going to be positive. So there's your answer to your criticism or whatever it might be." And then Glenn said, "Would that have been the case if you had stayed in Baltimore?" And Harbaugh was clearly getting a little annoyed at this point. And he said, "I don't know. I didn't stay in Baltimore, so it doesn't matter." I mean, this is a crazy interaction. Not on Glenn's part. Again, I thought Glenn handled it great. But like, it's just this thing with Harbaugh that we had talked about all season, Sam, where it's just like this I guess, need for John Harbaugh to just be right about everything. Where like he needs to be right and what he believes is correct. What everybody else believes, if it doesn't align with him, is wrong. I don't understand this mindset from John Harbaugh. I think personally, look, I respect everything that John Harbaugh did for this franchise over 18 years. But to me, I just think this is a horrible look.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, shout outs to Glenn Clark. I think he does phenomenal work. If you guys don't know about him, make sure you guys go to social media and look at him because he does phenomenal work. And that was clearly a great example of that there. Look, I mean, I've talked about it before and I'll probably say it again. John Harbaugh's stubborn. He's a stubborn guy. How else can you explain having Daniel Filelli on that football field? John Harbaugh has to be proven right time and time again. And that was a glimpse. That was just a simple glimpse at what John Harbaugh did for this football team. Now, being stubborn the way John Harbaugh is can work in your favor at times. There's a time in the players to be stubborn. I don't think you could be the type of football team that you've been for the last 18 years in the Baltimore Ravens without having a coach with a little bit of ego, a little bit of stubbornness in him. But that was detrimental to his success in 2025 for sure. Cost him his job. I mean, let's be honest. His stubbornness cost him his job. He thought that he was going to do things a certain way. Nobody can tell John Harbaugh anything, it seems. And this is a prime example of how that will look. Now, Harbaugh making his little media tour, sure, fantastic to get to see John Harbaugh in another color and see him, having some success or hoping to have success. All shout outs to John for that. But this is a clear glimpse at what went wrong for this football team. John Harbaugh continues to be stubborn, and you can't tell him nothing. But I got to tell you, Glenn did a great job bringing up that Zachary Rohr comment because it goes to show you, if you prove us wrong by having him as your DC. I mean, it just made no sense to me.
Yeah, and again, like there was a lot of good that Harbaugh said about Baltimore in these interviews, and shared that he'll miss Baltimore and had a lot of good things to say about Lamar and the city and everybody he worked with and whatever. But like you're right, this is a glimpse into what happened with Harbaugh towards the end of his tenure. And again, like being confident in your guys and the guys that you have worked with, whether it be the guys you're currently working with or have worked with in the past, I don't have a problem with that. Like I don't have a problem, if John Harbaugh believes in Zach Orr to get another opportunity and be great, or, for Jesse to be great in Baltimore, which I think happens. He believed in Mike, which was awesome. That's great. But it's just the thing of like, oh, well, I was right in this. I was right about this and I was proven right. And, oh, you were wrong. You were saying you were wrong. It's just like, it's not that deep, but it feels like John Harbaugh goes the extra step and the extra mile. And again, like when there were questions about, for example, the offensive line about, hey, this is what's going on out there. Harbaugh's like, oh, it's good. I guess it's good. And it's like everybody sees it. And it's like not. Again, for Zach Orr, I understand, like, yeah, he's a young coach. He probably will get another opportunity somewhere. I don't think he has another opportunity currently. I know he was maybe interviewing with the Cowboys at some point, but I'm not sure if that resulted in anything or will result in anything. So I have no problem with that mindset again, but it clearly didn't work in Baltimore. But Harbaugh's kind of taking like, I'm going to be right about this and you're going to be wrong about this. And it just feels like a bunch of like petty stuff where, yeah, again, I liked the McDonald hire personally. I do know there were a lot of people that were saying he's hiring his friends. But again, everybody wants the same thing here. Well, no, at least did when Harbaugh was in Baltimore. The fan base, the organization, the coaches, player, everybody wanted the Ravens win a Super Bowl. It didn't work. It didn't happen. And it felt like John Harbaugh didn't put the team in the best positions to do that, to be successful, because he was willing to go down with the ship if it meant he could do what he believed was right, and kind of almost ignored everything that he was seeing out there. And yeah, it did cost him his job.
Oh yeah, cost him big time. I mean, I'm still stuck on the fact that he was on Glenn's case about being proven right about Zachary Orr when you have a huge opportunity to prove everyone wrong. Have all the doubters, have to, eat crow and admit that they were wrong about Zachary Orr, and you didn't even hire him to your staff. Not as a defensive coordinator, not as an inside linebackers coach, not even as an assistant to the head coach. You didn't even try to hire that guy. So I don't want to hear the notion that, it'll be proven wrong. Zachary Orr is going to prove you wrong at this point, because if you thought he was good enough to be your DC, he'd be your DC. So I don't want to hear any of that nonsense about Zachary Orr and proving this wrong. I want Zachary Orr to succeed. I think that he does have a bright future, but the fact is he was a young play caller. We saw that going in. He didn't have the experience to back up that young play call mentality, something that Declan Dole has with Sean Payton and had with Ben Johnson. He didn't have that repertoire, didn't have that, say so in the defense going into this, position these last 2 years. So I'm not about it. I don't think it's, it's John Harbaugh in a nutshell. He's what you really don't see, but you see sometimes the little glimpses during media day. But this is who John Harbaugh is. He's a stubborn guy. He gets what he wants. That's how it's worked in New York. That's why the GM is answering to the owner and why the coach is answering to the owner and why he has an assistant that he goes to, a VP that answers to John Harbaugh, something that's never been done in the NFL. But all this is going to work to the benefit of the Giants, I'm sure. But his time in Baltimore was up. And that little 15-minute interview with Glenn Clark, again, shout outs to Glenn Clark, made it clear as day that Jesse Minter was the guy for the job. It was time for Harbaugh to go.
Sam, it makes me really sad for all of the great moments that this Ravens team had with John Harbaugh in 18 seasons. This is almost what is becoming what's talked about most with John Harbaugh. It's not the Super Bowl anymore. It's not some of that success that he had with Joe early in his career, getting to the AFC Championship game in their rookie years, respectively. Some of the great early years with Lamar when they were still figuring things out. It's become like these moments. And I don't want it to be that, because there was so much good in the John Harbaugh era. He did so much for this team, for the organization, for the city, but it just feels like the lack of accountability and just making these things about him being right or not. Like, again, Harbaugh is a guy that has repeatedly said he has no regrets, and that's fine. Like, you don't have to have regrets. Like, that's a totally reasonable thing. Like, hey, you know what? I made this decision. I don't have any regrets because I thought it would go this way. Okay, like, fine. But there's a difference between that mentality and the mentality of like, I have no regrets and I'm going to do everything in my power to try to back that decision up, even when it clearly was not the right one. And there are two different ways to go about it. And, I don't think John Harbaugh went about this the right way. There was a different way to approach this instead of getting into all the petty stuff about him being right and this and this and that. I think that's something that, when you hear Todd Monken speak, for example, to the media, and that accountability, that was something people wanted to hear from John Harbaugh. And very rarely did he hear that. And when he did it, it's like, no, John, you're so close. It's the wrong thing you're taking accountability for. But that's the type of thing. And I think everyone, and myself included, is looking forward to a fresh start with Jesse Minter and the way that he spoke in that press conference. He's someone that's not going to mess around with any of that. And I am excited for the Jesse Minter era in Baltimore.